down to New Orleans when they were living there, because Dad was off fighting the war. And we would go down, and Patsy would take us out on the Canal Street ferry across the way to Algiers and back. And that highlight of our trip to New Orleans was going to the ferry and riding it. That was our field trip. Every time we go there, we were just off of Carrollton, and we see the streetcars going by every night. And there was a sign back then. The Dixie Brewing Company had a sign that they had cartoons on it. They changed the sign every time we went back, so we had a different cartoon story every time we went back. I remember Granddaddy, Mom's father. He would sit on the porch in his rocking chair when he got home from work, and Mom would pour him a cup of coffee. He'd take a warming saucer and put it in there and give it to us, each one of us kids. We lined up to get our coffee, and we sit on the porch of Mom's house, and there's a big swing there, and in their bedroom was right next to the swing. She had this big old fan. We liked to get in front of the fan because it made our voices change when we talk. I'd gotten a birthday present from somebody, and it was one of the toad of town. You know, the story of the toad. I can't remember this. It was Disney had put it out. It was one of the classic stories about. I don't know if it's called Toad Town or whatever, but this little frog would, if you squeezed it, its tongue came out. So Granddaddy always called me Frankie the Frog. I have one memory of having received a wind-up train on a track for Christmas, and I think that was in Mississippi. Well, during the day she worked in the office, and if I get off school, I'd either be up at the freight depot, or I was over at Woolworth where Mom worked. But Dad would, he had his office in the back, and the front freight office was my great aunt, and she would do a clerk's job, and Dad was to bill out vegetables and things like that. So all day long he was in the back getting out freight orders for the night. And when he would come home later that night, he would go out to bill vegetables, and he had to put a seal on the boxcars that he has inspected them and they're ready to be shipped. So he would take us with him because he didn't want to just leave us at home and having him work all night long. So he took all the kids with him, and Mom was in the front seat. He'd go to the different produce companies to bill out their order, and we just sit in the back seat, and we had homework, we did it back in the back seat, or we didn't. We'd just sit and watch the goings on around the produce companies. Well, with Mom, we went up to Smokies. That was about my sophomore year. To Gatlinburg, we went into Cherokee and came around. And
what made it so memorable?
We had never been anywhere before. And then my second one was with my dad. We went up to Chicago on the train and walked the streets of Chicago from morning to night.
How old were you then?
Oh, I must have been junior in high school. We were staying at the Hilton, and I looked out from the street, Michigan Avenue down, up the street to the city, and I saw the Wrigley building. I wanted to see the Wrigley building. Dad said, well, let's get a taxi or something. I said, it's just right up there. It was about 2 or 3 miles. I didn't realize it, and how the city did that. So we walked all the way up to the Wrigley and all the way back to the hotel. It must have been in March, because they had a St. Patrick's Day parade, and Mayor Daley and everybody was parading out there. I remember coming into the city thinking this is a dirty, dirty place, because it had snowed all winter and they hadn't cleaned the buildings. Not really either.
Either one, okay. Did you fight a lot with either of them growing up? One more than the other?
If I fought with Hubert, I'd get beat up, so. And I tried not to fight with Betty, but she had a chip on her shoulder. 2 years each.
2 years.
Well, first marriage, Carol was Church of God, and we went up there for seminary.
Okay, so now you met Carol in high school, as she was a...
Yeah, she was in high school. That's where I met her, yeah.
Okay.
First met her back when I was in seminary. We only had passing acquaintance back then, but I was more acquainted with your dad.
Or anything?
Lon and I were, yeah. But he was a senior when I was considered in seminary a junior, middler, senior. So I was a junior and he was a senior.
Okay.
Pastored in Covington, Louisiana.
How long were you pastor there?
3 years. Well, it was a church that was pastored by a lady who had a dual congregation. And when I came to Covington, she was ready to retire, but then again, she didn't retire. Basically, she stayed out in the Waldheim community. There was a church there, and she was doing a dual role as well as being a nurse. So finally, she went out to Waldheim, and I stayed there at Covington in deserts in Egypt. Well, the culture and the difference in climate, and we'd be burning up in the daytime and cold at night because the desert winds would bring a mist. It never did rain as such in Egypt, but there was always a fog. That was their rain, and we'd get very cold at night and very hot in the daytime. But I felt that I had a bigger mission because I was over there for representing the entire 5th Army for a month, and as a chaplain there. Well, I went into the community. The first time I went over, I could be like a tourist when I went into the city, but the second time we were under strict advice to not go alone, not without military accompaniment and all of that, because the climate had changed. Prior to my first time going was when Sadat was assassinated. And we would have thought back then when we went to Egypt that we'd have a lot more guff from the people, but it was just like a tourist situation. Second time was more politically dangerous. After I got out of the Army, I stayed in Fort Worth for 7 years. Went to Bright Divinity School, and then I worked at J.C. Penney's for about 3 years, and got into the Baptist Hospital chaplain intern program. That's how I came to New Orleans. Well, at Roosevelt, it was my first chance to get into special education. They had a teacher strike when I first went there, and so that was my opportunity to at least get my foot in the door. First time on the job, I was called a scab, so. But I stayed on with them for 7 years. I taught in New Smyrna Beach for a year. I taught at Edgewater High School for a year and a half. Taught at Roosevelt for about 4 years. Taught at Piedmont Lakes for about 7 or 8 years. And went on to Ridgewood where I retired. I like Piedmont Lakes the most. Well, our dad and mom were family oriented. Keep everything family oriented and keep the family close together, whether you are a good acquaintance with them or not, you know.